So firstly, from the FEA, a very warm welcome to this morning's presentation, which is to give an update on the member survey, which we recently conducted. Adam put that out, and we closed that off on Wednesday. So we've had a quick turnaround on these slides to bring you some up-to-date information. And delighted to have the opportunity to put these before you. Let me just move the slide on. Okay, so in terms of a context, I thought it might be useful, in addition to the research information that we've got back from the members, I've also put some top line information from Make UK. For those of you who don't know, Make UK is what used to be the EEF, the Engineering Employers Federation. And we're an affiliate partner to Make UK. And so we get their regular reports, and we're an active participant in the work that they're doing. So then we'll move on to the results of the research that we've carried out. And then just an outline of the recovery that the sector is foreseeing from the operator industry point of view. But if I start off, you may have seen this from UK Hospitality, useful as an overview of what's happened within the economy as a result of COVID. And you see that the proportion of UK GDP loss attributable solely to the hospitality market decline across March and April is down 32.7%, which is pretty much what we would expect, but certainly a significant part of the lobbying that we and others like UK Hospitality and the British Beer and Pub Association is the work we're doing with government to get them to recognise the issues that are affecting the country as a result of that decline. And the other element as part of that we stress in our discussions with government and UK Hospitality is the fact that for our supply chain, for all of you on the call this morning, we are 100% dependent on the operator for our business. The food industry, the drinks industry is less dependent because it can sell through retail. But certainly our 10,000 or so employees underpin what the 3.1 million employees need to present food and drink to customers. So we make no apology for lobbying that very hard with government in our discussions. And you will have probably seen the results of some of our work, just a couple of extracts here from Catering Insight, the work that we've been doing. But it's important to point out, I think, that across January and February, there was a general tightening in the market in any case. We don't think all of that was Brexit related, but there was a market downturn, certainly as we saw further contraction and concentration of work in the casual dining sector. But really then moving on from there, the catastrophic decline in what went on within the operator market with the first in and what looks like being last out of lockdown has certainly, as we all know, exacerbated that. Going back to the reference to Make UK, and this is their Manufacturing Road to Recovery 3-point plan, and they highlight in there some issues across the breadth of UK manufacturing. So what 20% of furloughed staff, and 2/5 don't expect to get back to normal trading conditions for 6 to 12 months. We asked a similar question, and you'll see the results to that a little bit later on in the presentation. And just under 1/5 estimating it will take more than 12 months to get back to normal or full recovery. So that's in the broader market, the issues that they're seeing. Just some here in terms of some confidence figures showing the significant contraction. 1 is the worst case scenario, 10 would be a significantly better scenario, but you see the significant plummeting at the end of Q1 in business confidence as a result of the economic conditions. And that's also mirrored in the output figures, which, as you see, the second bar from the right is showing the output for quarter two. The next 3 months looking at a slight improvement. Just anecdotally, colleagues in other electrical industry sector associations are suggesting 15 to 20% drop in sales. Obviously, an adverse effect on their business, but for the most part, we're talking to FEA members. Anything between 80 and 100% drop in sales is typically what we're seeing, but we'll focus a little bit more on that later on. And orders similarly contracting, a slight estimate in output, so an increase in orders over the next 3 months, but still significantly below, with it pulling back to what, about a 46% balance of change in orders, negatively affecting the market. And the effect on UK and export prices here you see, with the declines there, aligned to UK and export margins, significant reductions, principally in UK margins as a result of those changes. And you see, unfortunately, it's all negative as far as the past 3 months and the next 3 months, as far as the outlook from the broader UK manufacturing position. And this is very much the lobbying that we're undertaking with colleague associations to try and ensure that the support from the Chancellor and that the government ensures that we try and retain levels of skills and experience through the furloughing to help us through this period until such time as orders start to recover. And so now, if I may, let's move on to some of the work that I know many of you will have contributed data, and if you did, thank you very much. The information we receive is invaluable, not only in the way that we can share it with colleagues within the association, but in terms of how we can use it in our hard-edged lobbying with all aspects of government. And the elements we're going to cover here are the effect on sales, the effect on the workforce, the business support in terms of loans and grants, some of the other market factors across the supply chain, and just an insight into some of the further work that we can be doing as the FEA on behalf of the industry. And this is the balance of the responses to the survey. So you see a spread across the breadth of the industry to varying degrees, but predominantly in the manufacturer and distributor products which make up the membership. Yes, we also represent dealers, some leading dealers within the market, and the service providers as well. So in total, there were 30 respondents to the survey, so that makes it statistically valid in terms of what we're doing. And let's go back and focus on those current and forecast sales figures. So if we take a look at the percentage of sales today compared to pre-COVID sales, some members saying they're currently at 10% of what they were, many at 20, some at 30, but not very many companies experience sales above that. And that is the catastrophic decline that the market's experienced. And I said, on average, we're really seeing an 80% decline in the immediate period post-lockdown. So then if we look forward, what do the next 6 months look like? So that takes us up to December. And here you see 3/4 of the respondents estimated to be over 50% of pre-COVID sales in 6 months' time, with 7 companies, that's the 30 and the 40 together, under that figure. So we're seeing that it's going to be a very tough year for many, with some up there at the 80 and 90%, but predominantly about the 50% mark, most feeling that's going to be the shape of the market come December this year. One thing I will point out, we will be posting these slides and the recording of the presentation in the COVID area of our website. So if you do miss anything on the way through, then you will be able to pick it up afterwards. And then if we look at 12 months, so that's taking us to June 2021. Now, the encouraging factor here is that everything is 50% above in terms of what companies expect the market to return to some sense of normality, but very few, in fact, only one company expecting to be at 100% of pre-COVID sales in 12 months' time. With the highest level of responses indicating it would be about 80% of pre-COVID turnover. And then 18 months' time, we see that a third of the respondents expected to be back to 100% trading by December 2021, but 40% of the respondents are in that 50 to 80% band. So it's still a mixed picture depending on where a business is within the market, and obviously reflecting the breadth of respondents across the categories that we had. So it's going to be a challenging 18 months, certainly. And the anecdotal comments that we'll reference a little later give some indication as to what the reasoning is behind that. So if we then move on to the second part of the survey, which was focused on the workforce, and this is just to show the breadth of coverage. So we've got predominantly SMEs, which is under the 250 employee threshold, showing on this graph. So it's across the breadth of the industry in terms of the size of business. And we'll see that there is a significant variance across the number of staff who have been furloughed during this period. Some numbers there down to only 10% of staff being furloughed, but the highest and most significant figure of this is that 30% of the respondents have furloughed 80% of their staff, and indeed another 8% there having furloughed 90% plus of staff. So we've seen a significant shrinkage in terms of the market employed, and I'm sure that's reflected in your own businesses. But then we wanted to find out what the effect might be on the Chancellor's suggested changes that will come into force of businesses needing to support 20% of the employment cost in the UK, and whether that will be supported or whether staff will be made redundant. And there you see a 60-40 split in the businesses that will support that increased subsidy effectively that they need to make as businesses against the plan for redundancy, with 40% needed to make redundancy. And I think that's in light of the picture that we've already seen across the 6, 12 and 18-month picture, that the reality of the situation is that there isn't going to be a meaningful return to full employment for all of the staff as a result of the long drawn out phase of this the process. One thing that's worth mentioning here is that in the early discussions and webinars that were going on within, for example, the CBI, their chief economist expected that it would be a V-shaped recession for the economy, and it would be a quick return to normality. The pundits seem to be reviewing their view of that, in that it becomes more of a hockey stick recovery. I think that's certainly going to be the case for the hospitality industry, because what we will see is the rolling up of the debts in terms of business rate loans, VAT deferrals, and also some of the costs associated with retaining employment, which mean that in the spring of next year, there will be a debt overhang, and will operators feel that they need to be in trading profit for a significant period of time before they can pay off those debts. And that's obviously going to have an impact in terms of the purchase of capital equipment to fund their facilities. So the economists do seem to be tending more towards a hockey stick than a V-shaped recovery to the economy overall. We then asked some questions on business support, and we've had significant feedback in of companies finding challenges to getting business support. Some are succeeding, many are not, but as you see here, just about a third of the respondents had applied for grants to support the business, and of the 32% that applied for the grant, just under 4 out of 10 were successful in achieving it. We see that there's differentials that are going on between different local authorities in the way they interpret grants, which typically should be for higher footfall businesses. That's what they originally intended to be, but it is being interpreted differently within different administrations. And we've sought clarity on that from government to try and give guidance and advice on local authorities to maximise the benefit, for the reasons that we are 100% dependent on a hospitality industry that's in lockdown at the moment and is closed for business, with the exception obviously of takeaway and delivery. If we then look on to the CBILS, the COVID business interruption loans, and just over a third of the respondents had applied for an interruption loan, and of those, just over half, 53%, were successful in receiving the loans. If anybody's unsuccessful, please do let us know. It's useful to have the information whilst the reasons why you may be turned down, so that we can feed that into government to see whether we can get some further fine-tuning done. And certainly the colleagues that we have within BEIS, the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Group, are very keen to have the feedback, because they want to be seen to be doing what they can to support business through all of this. And the other element that came up as a question from members was what was going on relating to COVID-related insurance claims. And we're no different from really any other sector of business in this. And here you see that a very small proportion, just about 4%, had been successful in their claims, their insurance claims related to COVID. If you've been unsuccessful, you'll probably be aware that we've already asked for that information, and we are making representations to the Insurance Ombudsman and also to the Insurance Association in terms of trying to get clarity on this, because I know many businesses believe they were covered, and it's only the interpretation by the insurance companies that's leading to a lack of payout. And this is a case that's been followed through by many other sectors of business. And we have seen some differing advice come from government in terms of their advice to insurance companies in terms of that cover. So I hope that's all clear so far. I'd now like to move on to some of the market factors that are affecting, or that you all feel will be affecting the market over the coming period of time. And this is broken down across manufacturers, dealers and distributors, and operators. And Adam, who's put these slides together, has compiled here a list of the key elements which may be useful in terms of your scenario planning. And just to refer back to some earlier webinars that we did with Martin Drake and also with Steve Loughton, those webinars are up and online and available for a download. Martin takes us through more of the strategic view of restructuring businesses, perhaps in light of some of these issues. And you may find it useful to refer back to those. The webinar that we did with Steve Loughton looked through some of the more tactical aspects in terms of what had come out of the results of previous recessions, and perhaps what businesses should be looking at in terms of the current difficulties that we're facing. And the fourth and final webinar that I'd refer to is Mark Peacock, relating to pricing of products and supply of products. A very useful webinar, perhaps in addressing some of those issues around some of the points that we'll see over the next 3 slides. So here's the situation for manufacturers. Yes, I think we all recognise that there are going to be significant business closures in the high street. 60% of the operator market is independent. Much of that market won't be able to re-emerge from this because furloughing staff and grants for business rates are all well and good to help keep the business running. But as we all know, there are other costs in running a business which will be draining the cash away, and that will cause the problem and is likely to cause a second-hand market. We'll see in the next slide on dealers there's a feeling that more dealers will move into the supply of goods for the second-hand market. Yes, credit will be tight, reduction in sales teams, longer lead times, credit issues, price wars, and perhaps less new products on the market and rationalised products from manufacturers is what was being foreseen. If I now look to the dealer market, yes, those second-hand issues, more online sales. There's a general feeling that there'll be a loss of dealers within the market, many closing, shrinking, looking to increase their debtor days to increase their cash flow. One respondent saying a 25% reduction in the number of dealers. Across the breadth of the dealer market in the UK, there are about 1,200 businesses out there selling equipment. They vary in size from, yes, £100 million plus businesses, or in fact £200 million plus businesses, to single person operations. Many FEA members run between 600 and 750 live dealer accounts typically, but we're certainly the industry thinks we're going to see a decline there. Credit insurance will be challenging, and there's a feeling also that the strength of the buying consortiums may be tested through all of this, through the reduction in volumes. So yeah, overall a consolidation and condensing of the market as far as dealers are concerned is what members are telling us. And then with the operators, top of the list there, an expected reduction in capex, possibly as a result of the debt overhang, and possibly also because certainly with the brands, if they're closing outlets, and we see here that there's a feeling there will be business closures, certainly in terms of the less profitable branches, can that equipment be used in other areas of the operation? But yes, a lack of cash. One respondent saying a 30% reduction in chain businesses is what is being estimated. But an overall tightening of the market, contraction in number of operators, more dark kitchens to address the takeaway and delivery market, and a refinement of the offer, menu management through all of this. And that's probably likely to be due to the need to restructure kitchens to remove some of the interaction between staff and have more of a cellular approach to the way in which food is stored, prepped, cooked and served, and a big drive towards takeaway. There are other reports around, and I commend anybody to have a look at the presentation undertaken by Simon Stenning. We have the link for that and we can put that out. He did a presentation which goes through the individual sectors and looks at the challenges they face in reopening. And this is very much where the last out element of hospitality from the lockdown issue comes to the fore, because different elements of hospitality and food service will be able to open only at different paces depending on what the government guidelines are in terms of distancing, and thereby the footprint that operators can expect to see within their outlets, and does that mean they can make a profit. Whilst the 4th of July is great to have as a reopening day for the whole of the industry, it's recognised that many branches won't open, and that's branches of group operated businesses and also independents, because unless they can get the threshold of getting into and making an operating profit, is it worth them opening, or are they better off carrying on with the furloughing staff and grants for business rates until such time as they think they can open? So it's going to be a fragmented opening, we feel, across the breadth of the industry. And we also asked the question in terms of whether members were experiencing challenges in getting payments from customers, and here you see just over 60% were finding that to be the case. And in terms of addressing that issue, I guess here really we don't see much more than what is good and effective business practice, looking at tight credit control and working closely with customers to manage the whole payment issue. Yes, it all being about communication and supporting customers where it's felt to be appropriate. One mention there towards the end is a move towards any opportunity for bond payment schemes to provide an assurance to the supply chain. And as a result of that, we had the discussion within the FEA Council meeting just 10 days ago, and there's a small working group going together to see whether that can be enacted. Yes, there would be a cost of a bond payment scheme, and there are various payment schemes available that we might be able to adopt within the market, and we're also working with colleagues in CEDA on that as well to see whether there is an opportunity to pull something together so that the equipment supply chain is not funding the operator in terms of their investment in new capital equipment for their kitchens. And then, so to move on to the other feedback in terms of support that you may be wanting as members through the business support that we can provide, and also through the webinars. You see there the list of the various elements that companies have asked for. Brexit is still there, and obviously the discussions that are going on in Brexit, which have recently deemed to have faltered, stalled or failed, depending on your viewpoint. Brexit still has a considerable effect on the industry operationally in terms of it needing to meet the requirements of the UK and Europe. And we heard just this morning in terms of the issues relating to the flow of goods between the UK and Northern Ireland. UKCA, which is the new marking requirement for product being placed on the market, and its alignment with CE marking. It's interesting to note that on the Gov website, the guidance and advice on UKCA has been withdrawn temporarily. We're in discussions with BEIS to give clarity to companies in terms of what that is and what they should be doing. However, what I would say is it's going to be very challenging or impossible for the UK to diverge from CE marking requirements on the 1st of January because there isn't the time to draft any standards or differing requirements from what we currently have with CE marking. And that's certainly our position within the FEA. It should be close regulatory cooperation and alignment with European regulation until such time as there's been a recovery in business, and that if government does want to look at, they should do that cautiously, given the other challenges that we're facing. So you see also there a further look at market trends and themes, and we'll be doing other work on that now we have this information to provide you with support on those elements. But what I would say, if any of you have any other elements that you want to add to that, then please do let any of the FEA team know, either Jocelyn, Adam, myself or Sarah Jane, and we'll incorporate that into the work we do to support you in the future. And then one last slide, if I may, and I'd be happy to take any questions. If anybody's posted anything on the chat, if I could ask Adam just to, or Jocelyn, just to round those up as we close the call, I'd be happy to take those, or we can take them directly. This is courtesy of Simon Stenning from his presentation last week. And the figures here are the UK operator turnover figures for the market. So just under 100 billion, about 98 billion pounds worth of UK food service turnover in 2019. The estimates there are seen for 2021, but I think that the challenge that this shows is that it's 2025 that is seen to be the time that the operator industry starts to get to a standard level of recovery to pre-COVID levels, and when consumer spending starts to get back to those pre-COVID levels. Whether it's as long as that is a matter of debate, but really going back to the point I made earlier about more of a hockey stick recovery rather than a V-shaped recovery is evident in what CGA and Simon Stenning are proposing as part of that. So thank you all very much for your time this morning and for listening. If there are any other questions or points that anybody would like to make, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
There's none currently on the chat at the moment, Keith, but if anybody does, just feel free to enter them.
Okay. Are there any questions for anybody? If so, if you'd just like to unmute yourself, that would be fine. We're happy to take them online. No? Okay. I think we're all good then. Thank you all very much for your time this morning. The slides will be posted on the COVID section of the FEA website. Just go to the information tab and look for the COVID element, and Adam has put together all of our relevant resources there, and we do keep that regularly updated. So please look for the regular newsletter that goes out every Friday highlighting the key elements, and it'll keep you fully informed. Thanks very much for your engagement this morning, and wish you well for the rest of the day. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, Keith.